The music score on any film is obviously vitally important because it totally guides your emotions when you're watching the film. I mean, the actors can do their job, the director can do their job in terms of creating a certain amount of mood and emotion, but obviously music is like so strong in evoking what you should be feeling at any given time.
Peter and Fran were very clear that they wanted someone that would collaborate with them, that would be willing to invest the time to develop themes and to help us even in production.
Because more so than just scoring the film, I wanted the music to reflect Tolkien. I wanted the music to also bring the world of Middle-earth to life.
So Howard agreed to come down and meet with Peter.
And he visited the set. And he visited the set again a few months later, and he was just started to immerse himself in the world very, very quickly once he'd agreed to do the film.
You could see the depth of the creativity of what they were trying to create in New Zealand and the passion for it. And I think it was on that very first trip that I had decided that I definitely wanted to do the film. It seemed like a hugely daunting task to do 3 films.
Normally on movies, composers might work for 6 or 8 weeks, but Howard was with us from very early on in the shoot. So, by the time The Fellowship of the Ring had been released, Howard had been on the film for nearly 2 years.
Tolkien spent 14 years writing Lord of the Rings, and you're now writing a musical image, creating the music, a musical mirror, if you will, to his writing. And I mention this so often, even in other discussions about feeling like Frodo, and I really did feel like that I had this amazing journey to take, and I had the ring in my vest pocket, and you were chosen, now you're going to write the music to Lord of the Rings, and you had to do it.
It was more than what we could have ever dreamt, really, because, Howard has become part of our family, part of our team on this film, and he is totally devoted to somehow give the music a cultural significance.
A section of the Encyclopedia of Moria, just so you understand, to give you some idea of this particular world that we're trying to create. Moria, it's in the year 1697, at the second age of the sun.
So that it's doing 2 jobs at the same time, and one, it's underscoring the film, it's providing an emotional link, a bridge between the movie and the audience, and it's drawing the audience in. But it's doing it in such a way that it's also telling you a lot about the cultures of this world. We don't really have the ability in the movies to use the songs and the poems to the extent that Professor Tolkien did in his books, but we are obviously trying to acknowledge that and to make it part of the texture and fabric of the movies.
Roisin Carty, who was the linguist on the film, she would do the pronunciation.
When I first met Viggo Mortensen, who plays Aragorn, it was the first thing he said. He wanted to sing this song. He's made up the tune himself. He wanted to give it a Celtic feel. And he's taken to the Elvish language like a duck to water. In Elvish, it's Tinuviel Elvanui, Elles Alferin Ethelhael, Ohon Ring Finnil Fuinui, Arenk Gelebrin Thilion.
Who is she?
We sat round our kitchen table at home talking about the choral ideas for Moria, and I thought it would be really great to weight it fairly heavily towards Polynesian singers, Maoris or Pacific Islanders, who have and gain another otherworldly quality to their voice. Mines being a dwarven kingdom would really suit having a sort of male voices, a bit like a Welsh mining choir.
And they're singing in this ancient dwarvish language.
So these 60 guys, chanting these dwarvish verses.
A demon of the ancient world.
And then I augmented it at the end with actual football players.
They were looking for some grunty voices, and they thought that a kapahaka flavor would fit in with it.
So Howard basically, found himself in the Wellington Town Hall in New Zealand with an all Polynesian male choir. Fran also became involved in the music. She wrote the lyrics for the song that is sung during the closing credits of the film, In Dreams it's called. She helped Howard direct the boys' choir. It was a London school choir with a wonderful young boy.
Edward Ross, he's probably about 12 years old. He represented the boys, and it was a boy soloist for the choir.
That song was recorded in the number 2 studio at Abbey Road, which is where the Beatles did all their recording. And as a huge Beatle fan, I was incredibly thrilled to be there, find myself there recording a song for our movie. We wanted to have some featured vocalists within the music as well, more so than just the choirs. And Enya's music has always been, closely related to Tolkien.
And I wrote the beginning of it, where you see Arwen with Strider. I wrote that little introduction that leads into it, and then she wrote that vocal piece, much like the way I was orchestrating the rest of the score.
The Lothlorien music, the music of the elves in Lothlorien, we deliberately gave it a slightly Eastern flavour.
It has some very exotic African instruments playing and some East Indian instruments playing in it as well.
One of my great joys was to get to work with Howard Shore and write some lyrics for his incredible score.
Philippa wrote a lot of the choral pieces that Howard needed for the various parts of the film. Whether they were elven choral or dwarf choral or the vocals. We wanted a song for Lothlorien as well, although we didn't think it was appropriate to use Enya in both places because we wanted the music to feel like Enya belonged to one part of the Elvish world, and we wanted a different voice for Lothlorien just to make them feel very separate. And Elizabeth Fraser, she has the most wonderful voice and ability to create this very ethereal sound with her voice.
Even now, there is hope left.
The Revelation of the Ringwraiths is a poem that Philippa Boyens wrote. They were sent to David Sallow, who's a Tolkien scholar. He would translate them into the appropriate languages. In the case of this, it was translated into Endunaic, which was the ancient speech of men. Isengard is the industrial age, and it's written in 5/4 to evoke this kind of things being a little off kilter. I mean, the 5/4 rhythm is a little unusual, that it always felt a bit unresolved. The Ring has many different voices in the music. So I used the sound of the boy choir of the seduction of the Ring, because I thought that part of the seduction of it, I thought, was the regaining of a lost life.
Boromir, it is a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt.
For the evil of the Ring, when Gimli tries to destroy the Ring, and you hear that evilness to it, and the black speech coming out of it. And then there's the just the sheer power of the Ring. You hear it in the prologue. I want to feel something when I watch the film, and that's how I create music. I mean, that I'm watching the film and feeling something and trying to create that in music. It's like the creation of the Fellowship. As the two hobbits leave Hobbiton and they set out on their own, And you hear the first statement of the Fellowship theme in the cornfield, because it's essentially the first time the Fellowship is formed. Finally, the Fellowship being formed to support Frodo to take the ring in Rivendell. It's a very magic moment in the film. And Elrond says that you will now be the Fellowship of the Ring, and the music just swells, and you just hear that fully formed version of the Fellowship theme. You never hear that true heroic version anymore after Gandalf falls. It's now disintegrating, and Frodo's on the beach, and you hear the last version of the Fellowship theme. What I'm doing now is writing 30 minutes of new music. I don't think anybody's ever done that. I think it might be a first, where the composer has gone back and recorded new music for new scenes that are wonderful scenes that give a lot more backstory to some of the cultures.
The music for the Fellowship of the Ring is going to be related, obviously, directly to the Two Towers and the Return of the King. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a day when it'll be very, it'll be an interesting day to listen to the music of all three films, because I know that Howard does see this as being the opportunity in his life to basically create a opera.
Taking it out of the context of what we think of film music and what we think of as opera. So if you think you're writing an opera piece, you don't think of it as in cues, but you think of a much larger structure. It has to have that cohesive shape. If you go to the opera, you've watched Fellowship, which is Act One, the curtain has come down, and you've gone out to intermission, you've had a drink or a snack or something, and now you've gone back and you're sitting in your seat, curtain's going up for Act Two. And that will happen December 2002.